Hello and welcome to this week's Midweek Reflection. I'm Father Michael Nasser here at St. Nicholas in Grand Rapids. Welcome to day 2 of election week or election month. We're not really sure. But don't worry, I'm not really going to talk about the election today, although it does provide a really important example of what I do want to talk about. What I plan to talk about today is another lesson I got from my recent bike trip on the White Pine Trail heading from Grand Rapids towards Cadillac. I did have some help along the way, didn't ride the whole thing. But anyway, along the way, I'm on this rail trail. And the fact that I'm on a rail trail is significant because what's a rail trail? It's where there used to be a train track, and now the track is no longer needed, so they take the track out because there's no railroads on that path anymore, and they can pave most of it, and so it's not paved. But anyway, it's a bike trail. I thought about that, and I thought, wow, amazing how this whole line, I was on parts of 92 miles of it, but there's hundreds of miles in this country of rail trails, which means every one of them was part of a railroad system that somebody at some point thought, we need this, we're gonna need it for a long, long time. And much sooner than anybody thought, those railroads were taken out. They saw a present reality that said, we better build a railroad because we're needed for the future. And through their present reality, they saw that future, only guess what? They were wrong. What they were looking at in the present was a mirage. That once we lay this railroad down, it's going to stay here for generations and generations. All kinds of ideas they thought they saw in the future that were wrong. What made me think about it was not just riding on the trail, but as I'm riding on the trail, because it's a railroad or it used to be a railroad track, it's not a main street. You're seeing kind of like the backyard of America. That's what I thought I was going to entitle this post, is the backyard of America. You're seeing businesses that were built along this railroad path because they want to have access to the railroad that after who knows how many decades, a lot fewer than they planned, was no longer there. Whole towns. I would come off the trail in a town and I'd see the old railroad station typically boarded up or maybe turned into a bathroom or a restaurant, if I could find the station at all. Um, but that town was sort of not there anymore in many cases because the railroad wasn't there anymore, and the town was there in many times because of the railroad. And then in between the towns, you go by businesses again that they thought were going to be there. Think about people planning a family business, lumber yards and gravel pits and hardware stores and factories gone. A whole airport. I found an airport in the middle of nowhere that was no longer needed, right off the railroad. In the backyards of homes, you would see cabinets, just stacks of old cabinets stacked up there. And I thought, interesting that at some point, probably a very happily married couple got together. They went to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, and they redid their kitchen because they thought that's going to make us a great home. And then you think about it, a decade or two later, how many of those families or married couples aren't even married anymore? Or if they are, did it really bring them the happiness that they thought it was going to? And then I realized in so many cases, what we think we see doesn't exist. It's a mirage. That's what a mirage is. We see something that we think is real, but it's not. Why do we see it? Because we're looking for it. You're in the middle of the desert and you're thirsty and you're starting to get a little delirious. You can actually physically see what's really just, some kind of vapor coming off the horizon. You're going down the road in the desert, you see what looks to be a lake. And you get closer, it's a mirage. But when we see these things, it's so often because we want to see them. You think, well, how could you see something that's not there? We do it all the time. Think about a football game. You know, there's a long, long pass. Receiver goes up to get it, gets tangled up with the defensive player. Flag is called, and while the referees are consulting, almost everyone on the one team sees it the same way, which is the opposite way of almost everyone on the other side. Tens of thousands of people, each group seeing, really thinking they saw it the way that they think they saw it. We do this all the time. Talk about the selection just for a second. People said, be careful of the red mirage, the blue mirage, because You're going to get the election day vote that night, but then you're going to get the absentee vote later on. It's going to change the thing, and everybody's kind of freaking out because we forgot that we can look for something and then be surprised that it's not actually that. But even elections themselves, what's an election based on? A candidate puts himself out, and everyone that becomes for that person sees what they want to see. I got 2 emails yesterday about the election, both very sincere. From one from both from our parishioners. One said, Father, I can't imagine anybody voting for candidate A because he's so terrible, policy XYZ. Everyone should vote for candidate B. Next email, Father, I can't believe everybody's voting, and then the opposite. Why? Because they saw in each candidate what they thought they saw, what they were looking for, whether that was good for the candidate they liked or the things that were terrible in the candidate they didn't like. And in both cases, what is it? It's a mirage. So today, I want us all be careful of seeing what we think is real that's really just a mirage. Think about all those broken dreams along that trail that I got to see, those backyards that's now junk. And they were dreams. Those were people's dreams. They thought this is going to make our life what we want it to be. And it was a mirage. What's the most important lesson out of all this? There's one truth that is always truth. And if we look to this truth, we're going to see real truth. And that's Jesus. That's Jesus Christ, the ultimate truth. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so many of us, even that are Christians, don't look hard for him. Why? Because we see other things that we think we see, whether it's financial stability or health or safety or whatever. And we look for it in political campaigns. We look for it with doctors. And nothing wrong with all those things. What's wrong is we look to them for our salvation, our safety, our security. And because we're looking for it, we think we see it in those places, in those people. But guess what? It's a mirage. It's an illusion. So today, with lots of mirages out there that we could fall for, I want to encourage all of us to look for the one thing that's true, and then everything associated with him is true. Jesus Christ, who's God's expression of love to this world. Not just truth, but of love. That because of who he is and what he did and does for us, we have no need for fear. We have no need for confusion. No matter what, no matter how long an election takes to figure out or who ends up winning. There's important things to talk about. Nothing close to the importance of understanding the truth of Jesus Christ. So for those of you that are Christians, I'm going to encourage you, look for the truth of Christ and get your eyes off of what you see that you think is so important. That's often a mirage. And if you're not a Christian, I want you to think about and find out and investigate, who is this Jesus Nazareth? What did he say about himself, about his Father, about the world? Because there's a lot of truth that most people are not understanding, and even some Christians they had it and they're leaving it. And they're leaving the truth of Jesus Christ often for a mirage. So that's my reflection today. I think I'm probably done talking about the bike trip, but you never know. If you found this helpful, please forward it to a friend, share it, like it, do whatever people do on the internet, and I'll see you next week in next week's Midweek Reflection. God bless.